Thanks for joining us for another day of mobility. Find yourself a comfy spot on your mat. Take some attention to your breath. Doing your best to clear your mind of any stress that's been ongoing. Allow yourself to be focused completely in the moment. Not worrying about what's going on for the rest of the day or what happened yesterday. All we need to worry about right now is just you and your breath and helping your body move a little better. Taking some attention to your breath. And gradually massaging your breath into a form that's going to help you relax. Generally, when we slow our breath down, it helps us get in a nice passive state that allows us to heal and recover. Focus on directing that air deep into the diaphragm and slowly exhaling through the nose. Let's take one more good quality breath here. We'll slowly sigh out that breath. Grab yourself a lacrosse ball and we'll start with some ball whack. So this is a technique to loosen up some of that superficial tissue, that fascia that tends to restrict movement around that lower limb. And the idea is you're going to press that lacrosse ball in against your skin and use your offhand to whack it along the axis. So this one can be a little tricky if it's new. What we don't want to do is whack the lacrosse ball in against your body. We want to whack it along the surface of your skin. So think about directing it down along the shin bone, that shin muscle, and using your other hand to just get pressure, to hold it in place, and you're using your other hand to kind of move it along the surface of your skin. And what we're feeling for is anything that doesn't move well. And you can just kind of test this with your fingers. Feel like your skin's not really moving well in a certain area. Just use that lacrosse ball, get some pressure in along that tib band or your calf. Anything below your knee is fair game. It's a really good exercise for getting over shin splints or general tightness in that low limb when other techniques haven't done the job. Let's take one more whack here, and we'll stick with the same side and move into the tib ends. So the tibialis anterior is like the shin muscle. It's just on the outside of your shin, and this can be pretty sensitive. And here we're getting pressure on that shin and being sensitive to how much pressure and tension your body's okay with today. So experiment with where exactly we're applying that pressure, the angle we're leaning on that lacrosse ball, and how much weight we're letting sink into it. It can be helpful to move into some dorsiflexion and plantar flexion to move your ankle through its range of motion and help free it up in the positions of restriction. So do some free falling, some experimenting. Just pay attention to how your body's reacting and what version of this exercise your body needs today. And as always, doing our best to stay as passive as we can, mentally and physically. Any muscle we don't need, concentrating on relaxing and getting as passive as we can. Let's take one more breath here. And as we sigh out that breath, we'll shift our attention into the left calf. So working the back side of that lower limb. You may be tight in that lower calf area, in the soleus, or maybe in the gastroc, maybe near the junction. Anything's fair game here. We just don't really want to get into that Achilles tendon. So don't go too low into the ankle. We do want to be on muscle here. And just feel out what's tight and restrictive today and what needs attention. And once you've found it, settling into your breath, doing your best to keep your breathing sink to that tissue. As you're letting go of air, let that calf muscle just go to sleep. Letting go of any stress. And again, turning off any muscle we don't need. There's a few layers to this. Layer one is just let that calf sit and rest on the lacrosse ball. And get a bit of motion through it. To add a bit more pressure, you can stack your right leg on top. To add a bit more pressure, you can lift your hips off the ground. Find the level that feels right. Let's take one more breath. And we'll sigh out that breath and shift into some ankle traction. So we're just going to grab a hold of your foot and gently tug your foot away from the direction of your body. And the idea here is to gently free up some joint space and undo some of the effects of gravity and all that time we spend on our feet. That can allow those joint surfaces to glide a little better. So just be careful not to grab this at your ankle. We want to be completely on the foot. It can be helpful to move it in like a circular motion. Just feel out what feels right for today. It should be zero pain, zero discomfort. All we're feeling for is a slight pressure release in and around that joint. And let's take one more breath. We'll slowly exhale. We'll transition into a left side low dragon. So in the low dragon, we want to let that chest sit heavy on top of that lower limb and feel out getting a good stretch in that lower to mid calf. Just being sensitive to how much stretch your body's okay with. It's really helpful to really rest your chest on top of that knee and let the knee travel out in front of those toes into whatever level of stretch feels right for today. And it can take some time for those muscles to settle in and relax. Just mentally scan through anything that might be tense. Is your foot tense? Is your lower ankle tense? Is your calf tense? Constantly scan through those muscles and try to turn them off one at a time. And we'll gently start to get active through this stretch by pressing the balls of the feet into the floor, slowly ramping up tension. Trying to reverse that stretch. Let's give it a good squeeze here for these last 5, 3, 2, 1. Let's gently reverse. Squeezing through the front side of your foot, your tibans, pulling deeper into your dorsiflexion, ramping up tension as we go. Really squeezing here for these last 5, 3, 2, 1. Big breath out, relax, get nice and passive. And again, scan through that lower limb and just look for whatever feels like it's tense that doesn't need to be. One muscle at a time, just hit the off switch. We're getting deeper into the stretches by relaxing, not by force. Let's take one more breath here. As we exhale, we'll shift into some left ankle circles. So we find this one easiest to do lying flat on your back, grabbing a hold of your shins with your hands, holding your lower limb into place, and just gently moving your ankle through its full range of motion in a circle. And the first few reps go nice and slow, nice and deliberate, and we'll gently add a little bit more force into those corners as we work our way through this minute. Generally, the harder we work into those corners, the bigger benefit we get. And like most circles that we do, it can feel like you've hit an end range when you might have a little bit more to give. So just give that second nudge when you feel like you've hit a corner. Just give a little bit more force and see if there's a little bit more room to move. Let's finish with some good force for this last 5 seconds, really squeezing into those corners. And we'll slowly sigh out that breath and shift our attention to the right side. So we'll grab that lacrosse ball and do some ball whack on this side. And again, the idea is to hold the ball into place with one hand, and with the other hand, just move it along the surface of your skin to help free up some of that superficial connective tissue. And you can do it on the tib band, you can do it on the lower calf, you can do it down in the Achilles, anything that feels restrictive. And experiment with how much pressure you're applying with the hand that's holding the ball into place, and how much force you're using to move that ball along the surface of the skin. And again, what we don't want to do is whack the ball in towards your lower limb. We want to whack it along the skin surface. And just generally progressing. If you find any areas that feel particularly sticky, feel free to stay around that area. Your sticky spots may look very different than they do in the video. Just be sensitive to that. Pay attention to what your body needs. Let's take one more breath here. We'll slowly sigh out that breath and shift our attention back into the right tib band. So placing that lacrosse ball under the tib band, the tibialis anterior, which is like the shin muscle. On the outside of that shin, we want to be on muscle, not on bone. And again, this can be a really sensitive area, especially if you do a lot of walking or running. Just be sensitive to not pressing into pain. And again, it can be useful to move that ankle through some range of motion here. So experiment with what area we're working on, how much pressure we're applying, the positions of restriction, and always pay attention to how your body's responding. And every chance we get, circling back to your breath, concentrating on nice, deep diaphragmatic breaths, relaxing through any muscle we don't need, and consciously trying to relax through that target area in that tib band. Imagine softening that muscle to let it just mold itself around that lacrosse ball. Staying nice and relaxed and passive. Just allowing yourself to enjoy the moment. Let's take one more breath here. And as we exhale, we'll shift into the right calf. So shifting sides, still on the right side, but working the back side of that lower limb. Panning through and searching for what needs attention today. And the only person that's going to really know that is you. So let the video guide you and be a starting point, and let your body's feedback really help you fine-tune and zero in on what needs attention. And every chance we get, circling back to your breath, getting as passive as we can, finding the level of pressure that feels right for today. Focusing on good quality breaths. Working on finding that happy medium between too light a pressure and too hard. And too hard is easy, that gets into pain. If we're going too light, we don't get much benefit either. So feel out what feels right for today. Directing that air deep into the diaphragm and slowly exhaling through the nose. Let's take one more good deep breath here, and we'll sigh out that breath and shift our attention to the right ankle traction. So again, the idea here is to just free up a little bit of joint space. Should be zero pain, zero discomfort. All we're feeling for is a slight pressure release, just giving that ankle a gentle tug away from the direction of the body. And it can be helpful to move the ankle through a bit of a circular motion. Just feel out what your body needs today. And this is fairly active, obviously, with the upper body, but still consciously trying to stay as passive as we can in any muscle we don't need, especially around that right ankle. Let's take one more good breath here. Sigh out that breath, and we'll shift into that low dragon on this right side. So in a lunge position, letting your body sink on top of that lower limb, feeling for a stretch around that mid-calf. And really try to feel in whatever version of this lets you get a stretching sensation in the back part of that limb. It really helps directing your upper body's weight on top of that lower limb, letting the knee travel out in front. And then scanning through all those muscles from the toes all the way up to your knee, one at a time. Just turn the off switch for all those muscles. Get as passive as you can, working within your pain-free limits of range of motion. And in 10 seconds, we'll gently get active by attempting to reverse the stretch by pressing the balls of the feet into the floor. And let's go ahead, starting with nice, easy tension and pressure, slowly ramping that up as we go, attempting to reverse the stretch. Let's really push with some good force here to finish. 3, 2, 1. Let's gently reverse, actively trying to pull the ankle deeper into that dorsiflexion, ramping up tension as we go. Really squeezing here for these last 5. 3, 2, 1. Big breath out, relax. Get nice and passive, mentally going back to your happy place. Letting go of all that stress. Getting as passive as you can. Allowing yourself to enjoy the moment. Take one more breath here. We'll slowly sigh out that breath. We'll move into some right ankle circles. So again, if we lie flat on your back, just hug your right shin, hold it in place. And start by moving that ankle in a circle. Nice and slow and deliberate. And with each circle, try to carve out a little further into your end range. And again, a second wind push is really helpful here. If you feel like you've hit a wall, just give it a subtle push or tug further into that end range. It's a great tool for adding controlled range of motion and stability around that ankle. It helps us move in further range of motion and also be more stable and injury resistant. So slowly ramping up that tension as we work our way through. Really giving a good squeeze here for these last 10 seconds. Making yourself work. And let's sigh out that breath. We'll shift it to the wrists. Let's go palm side down on your lacrosse ball, working your way through that forearm. You can use your right arm to add some pressure or tension. You can rest your head on top. And just pan through that left side wrist flexor for what needs attention. And like all these other lacrosse ball exercises, you can move along it. You can move in either direction with the fibers of the muscle or against those fibers. You can just sit passively along it. You can experiment with moving your hand, do flexion and extension. The only one that's going to know what version of this exercise works best for you is you. So just do some experimenting and feel out what your body needs today. Working within your pain-free tolerance. Let's take one more breath here. We'll slowly sigh out that breath, and we'll shift to the right side. So panning through that right forearm flexor, palm is face down on this right arm, and just search for what needs attention and how we're going to address that tension, whether it's moving with or against the fibers, whether it's just hanging out passively on top of it. Just feel out what your body needs and what it's responding best to. And every chance we get, circling back to your breath. Settling into that nice rhythm and depth of breath. It helps you find calm. Letting your breath calm your mind and letting your mind calm your body. Again, doing your best to stay absolutely present here. Just focus on what we're doing right now, not whatever else is going on in your life. This is all you need to worry about right here. This is time for just you. Some quality me time. Let's take one more breath here. We'll slowly sigh out that breath, and we'll move into some wrist extension. So let's get into tabletop. Let's go palms down, fingers towards your knees, and gently lean back towards your heels if you have room for it. If a standard tabletop with your shoulders above your wrists is enough of a stretch or too much, you can even lean a bit forward. Find the version of this that is pain-free for you, that your body's okay with. And then circle back to your breath, getting as passive as you can through your hands, your fingers, your palms, your forearms. Scanning through anything that may be tense that doesn't need to be. Concentrating on nice relaxing breaths. And in 10 seconds, we will start by getting gently active by pressing the pads of those fingers into the floor to resist a stretch. And let's go ahead, starting nice and easy. Slowly ramping up tension as we go. And let's really squeeze here for these last 5. 3, 2, 1. Let's gently reverse. Squeeze through the opposite side, actively trying to pull yourself deeper into the stretch while holding the stretch. Ramping up tension as we go. Let's finish with a big squeeze. 3, 2, 1. Let's let go of that breath. Start scanning through that target area, your hand, your wrist, your fingers. Letting go of any tension in those target areas. It feels pretty good there. Start scanning through your body. Let go of tension through your face, your head, your neck, your feet. And let's take one more good diaphragmatic breath here. We'll slowly sigh out that breath, and we will call it a day. Thanks for joining us here today. Hope the ankles and wrists are feeling great. Hope you enjoyed this session. We'll see you again tomorrow. Have a great day.